David Becker had been charged with 2 counts of rape and 1 count of indecent assault stemming from an East Longmeadow house party in April where drinking had been going on. According to court documents, Becker allegedly penetrated the 2 victims with his finger while they were unconscious. Becker was allowed to plead guilty to a lesser charge of indecent assault and battery. While the rape charge was dropped, the DA still recommended a 2-year prison sentence based on the facts of the case. However, the judge, after listening to both sides, sentenced Becker to probation for 2 years with conditions, thus avoiding jail time.
2 young women sexually assaulted while unconscious. Their attacker gets only 2 years of probation. Back with Yodit, Jenna, and Pat. And joining us is Judge Alex Ferrer, attorney, former circuit court judge. And Alex, help me here. I'm so glad you joined us, because it seems like there seems to be so much judicial discretion around cases like this, where we are constantly looking at them, evaluating them, and thinking, well, why did this guy only get that, and this guy seemed to get something very different? And it all seems to fall on the judge's decision. Help us.
Well, that's true. I mean, judges have a lot of discretion when there are not minimum mandatory sentences to impose a sentence that they feel is appropriate under the circumstances. And in doing that, judges take into consideration a lot of factors. They take into consideration the age of the individual, the priors. Do they have prior incidents, or is this an isolated incident? What the victim wants. That's another big part of it, depending on the type of crime. You know, the rape or sexual battery spectrum is very wide. You can have a person accused of sexual battery because they're 18 years old and they have sex with a 16-year-old girlfriend. And in that particular state, sex with anybody under the age of 18 is considered a rape. And you can have a violent break into your house and, you know, stranger rapes a woman in her bed, and they're both maybe referred to as rape, but they're very different crimes, and judges treat them very differently. And so, of course, they focus, you know, in that second scenario, in that worst case scenario, a judge isn't going to give much weight to what a victim wants in that scenario. If a victim wants to be lenient towards that, you know, horrible individual, the judge is going to say, no, we're interested in protecting society against this individual.
Is there a converse where the victim wants to be aggressive and the judge goes, oh, this is just a kid, things got out of control. He identifies too strongly with the perpetrator?
Yes, absolutely. We saw that not more than a month ago in that case with Brock Turner, where he dragged that woman behind a dumpster, and the judge apparently gave a lot of weight, I guess, to the fact that he was a 19-year-old. And frankly, you know, I find a lot of fault with that. I was 19. I became a police officer. I knew what I was doing. He was 19. He dragged a woman behind a dumpster and raped her. He knew what he was doing.
Well, that mistake happens. That range is what to non-judges and non-attorneys, I find rather confusing. And Pat, the communication between this current case, David Becker, and his victim may have impacted the sentence. Is that right?
Well, allow me to read to you. Here are text message exchanges between David Becker and one of the victims. Becker saying, just wanted you to know that I really am sorry. The victim responding, don't even worry about it. It's all good. There's also a victim impact statement where the other victim said she didn't believe jail was necessary. One other thing that I would like to add, because I think it plays a role, but I'm not a lawyer, the fact that I don't believe, and if I'm wrong, somebody please correct me, from what I've read, the victims did not report this to anyone. There was a rumor going around the school that this may have happened. So one of the officers, one of the campus officers, approached the victims, and that's how it all came out. Does that play a role if the victims don't go screaming about it and they're sort of forced to respond this way?
Yodit, does that have an impact?
Well, I mean, victims are damned if they do and damned if they don't. I mean, if they come forward, then they get scrutinized. If they don't come forward, it could be a myriad of reasons why they don't. And one of them is getting a backlash from society. But I will say this, absent a law that says that anybody who commits a rape has to go to prison, probation will always be an option for certain sexual crimes. So who would be a good candidate for probation? This judge obviously has discretion, looked at several factors that the judge just mentioned. Age, this kid was 18. Whether there was an apology made, he did. He apologized through a text. Looked at the victim's statement. The victim said they didn't want him going to jail. Then you have a criminal history. He has none. Then he looks at what he's doing with his life. He's about to go to college. Then was there alcohol present? And I don't know how much weight the judge would have given that, but that was the case. And so he saw that probation was, you know, the proper punishment in this case. So who gets the benefit of probation and who doesn't? Because obviously, every one of these cases can't end up sending a kid to the penitentiary. I mean, that's just realistic.
Alex, you agree?
Yeah, actually, I do agree. I agree 100%. The factors all have a certain amount of weight, and just small things can make a big difference. In my mind, even the fact that in this case, they were laying in bed together and it was a different situation, even though it's still a criminal offense, and the fact that the prosecution dropped the rape charge, those are factors a judge is going to look at, as well as very heavily the victim saying, I don't want him to go to jail. On the other hand, you've got the Brock Turner case where he drags this unconscious woman behind a dumpster, and it's just a different crime altogether. He's 19 years old, not that much of an age difference, but he's a college student at that point. And yeah, I can see a judge, you know, it's not easy to be a judge. You weigh a lot of different factors, and you have somebody's life in your hand, and you also have a victim who's been traumatized. And another factor they look at is the effect on the victim, both physical injury and psychological injury. All of that gets taken into account.
And Pat, I got to go to break. 10 seconds.
Real quickly, David Becker had no criminal history. He was an athlete, did a lot of community service. But the flip side of that is people say, but it's an uneven playing field that white, wealthy kids seem to get that kind of consideration and others don't.
That's what we'll talk about after the break.